Hi, I'd like to show you today how I make my sauerkraut slash kimchi in a small batch. A small batch meaning one 2-quart, half-gallon size mason jar. We'll be going over the equipment, how to do it. I assume you're here for one of two reasons. One, you like sauerkraut and you like it homemade. And if you're like me, the old traditional ways, you had these gigantic crocks that were 100 pounds and 10, 20, 30 gallons, and took an army, and then it stunk up the house or the cellar, and then once it was fermented, you have to stuff it into mason jars. Well, this eliminates that whole crock process and actually ferments and cans the cabbage, the sauerkraut, in the same vessel, which saves a heck of a lot of time. Very efficient. And the second or third reason is because you're familiar with the probiotic, the very helpful benefits of having your own fermented food, because it helps your gut, helps your digestion. So I try to eat a serving of my kraut every day. A 2-quart jar will last an adult, even just having a little serving, 3 or 4 weeks, depending on what you need. So by the small batch method, which would take maybe an hour and a half, you only need to do that once or twice a month, and you have an unlimited supply of good, delicious kraut, flavored to your liking. So let's go look at the equipment. First, I have a soup pot, big 3-gallon, and that we're going to be using for mixing and smashing the vegetables. Here's whatever various sizes of containers you need. You can even cut your vegetables ahead of time. This is a big one because we have to hold at least 2 pounds or an average head worth of cabbage. So that's sort of a holding container. Here we have a postal or kitchen scale, because we will need to weigh the vegetables. 2 pounds of cabbage to a tablespoon of salt. I use nothing but pink Himalayan salt. This is a fine, extra fine grain. You can use coarse. Well, I wouldn't. It needs to be ground up. I already buy mine, by the pound, already in a fine texture, so that works great. This is much, much more. If you're not aware of the helpful benefits of pink Himalayan salt, that's a video in itself, but there's some 61 different minerals in here. Do not use white table salt. You're missing half of the nutritional benefits by using just, purified salt. The pink Himalayan will add a lot of extra flavor and excellent minerals to your product. And so here's some of our food items. I'm gonna put garlic into mine. Oh, what are you saying? Sauerkraut. Okay, sauerkraut, yeah, traditionally is just 100% cabbage, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you can add other stuff, and today we're going to be adding carrots, onions, and garlic. I've added stuff like radishes, Brussels sprouts, and even different flavors like hot sauce, jalapeno. I've used Thai red curry paste. Adds a little extra zing to it. We're talking more of the kimchi versus sauerkraut. So the suggestion though is experiment, and if anything else, please add garlic. Once you try your first batch of kraut with garlic, you'll never go back. So, but I like the carrots and the onions. I've tried all kind of different things. Please experiment, and away you go. Two special pieces of equipment that I did buy is these fermentation caps. Now these I got off of Amazon. They fit a standard wide mouth mason jar, and these are basically an airlock. There's a little mechanism there that allows the air to escape, but no airborne contaminants to come in and ruin your kraut. I had started out using just the regular ball lid, but this was just so much better. So you can start off, if you don't need this to start off with, but it's a very, very cost effective. These are really cheap investment, and they really help. The other thing I did was purchase these glass weights. These have a little handle. They fit inside a wide mason jar. Again, I got these off of Amazon, and until they start paying me, I'm not going to give you the brand name, but you can find them. And again, if you don't have those, don't worry. Your first batch, I was made kraut for a couple months before I purchased these two items, but these two definitely help. And in place of that, I actually got a small mason jelly jar, filled that with water, and then when you put it into that jar, it adds as the weight. You want to weight down the top of the cabbage, and this is an easy way to do it. Again, the way I'm going to show you today is the weight and the airlock lid. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with how I chop up the vegetables. There's no right way, no wrong way. If you want little slices, you want slivers, you want chunks, you want it minced, doesn't matter. However, I will show you how I chop up a head of cabbage. Now here's the one thing I don't. I just use a regular French knife, kitchen knife. You do not have to invest in a fancy mandolin or some kind of slicer. If you have one or a food processor, go for it. But I wanted to show you like how easy it is to do with just stuff that you have in your kitchen already. And I came up with a little bit of a technique. It works for me. And for 2 heads of cabbage, once or twice a month, I'm not going to invest in some, goofy mandolin. So now, this is the only piece that perhaps is unique. Maybe it's my signature. What is it? Oh, it's a piece of wood. What we have here is, I do a lot of woodworking, so I had a piece of maple laying around. I know not everybody has a piece of maple laying around, but I'll show you the purpose as we go through the video. Maybe someday I'll manufacture and sell these. I don't know. But this is 21 inches long, 2.5 inches wide, 3/4 inches thick, with the edges rounded off. These 3 holes, there were 3 holes in there. It was a piece of scrap wood. So I just drilled bigger holes so that I know which end is up. Okay, this is the pounding end, and this is the holding end. You'll see how that comes to be. If you don't have that, again, don't freak out. Use whatever you have in the available, any kind of a mallet or rolling pin, the end of any kind of a smasher. Maybe not a potato smasher, even a spoon, but this is my tool of choice that worked out very, very well for this size container. So I list it there. That's my way. Okay, what we have here, your basic head of cabbage. And what I'm going to do is just take, there's usually a big nasty leaf. It's maybe got some brown spots, but it's still edible. You want to keep those. Just want to peel off the stuff that's nasty, but you'll see we will use these later in the process. So we're going to put that aside. Okay, so now we've got a clean head to go. Now this is the core. That's a very woody part. You really don't want that in your kraut. Not going to kill you. It's kind of a fibrous kind of being. So what I do, my technique is I'll quarter this. Once this way and then at a 90-degree angle. Cutting directly through the core. So you get that core there that's visible. Okay. Then I'll half it, quarter it down. Now there is where you just come in like that and toss that out. See? So that's the part you want to get out. You don't need that. Then, from here, I don't know about you, again, there's no wrong way to cut the size of the kraut. Me, I like long pieces as well as short pieces. So, kind of cutting against the grain gives me those long pieces, which I don't know, just a personal preference. And depending which side of the grain, see how I get those nice long pieces. Now, if you don't want those, just chop them up finer. This is what I do. There'll be plenty. There we go, cross grain. Now this has a big thick chunk. I'm gonna save that and chop that up finer. So there you go. That's it. Again, no right or wrong way. I'll put this in our container. And if you have these scraps, and you just chop those up a little bit finer. No big deal. Okay, now I've filled up this bowl with the sliced cabbage. This is 1.5 heads, and from past experience, if you're not sure, I'm just going to weigh that. I know I didn't tear it out. I'm at 4 pounds 15 ounces, so that's pretty close to my 4 pounds. So I'm going to save this, not cut this. If we need it, we'll certainly chop it up. Also, another tip, when I go into the supermarket, most of the produce sections will have those scales. So, because some, you know, what's a medium-sized head, what's a large head, plus I've had very dense cabbage, smaller, that actually weighs more than one full of air. So if you weigh out your cabbage at the supermarket, you want to at least get 5 pounds. Okay, there is a little wastage with the core, the outer leaves, but just to make sure you have enough, you don't want to be caught short. So this is our 4 pounds, big bowl of cabbage. What I'm going to do next, I'll come back, is cut up, dice the carrots and the onions and the garlic, and we'll be ready to combine all those ingredients into our mixture. Okay, we're back. What I've done was cut up the cabbage. This is a little more than 4 pounds, 1.5 heads. These are 2 onions, diced up into bite-sized pieces. This was 3 carrots, chopped and diced, and 6 cloves of garlic. So those will be our ingredients. Okay. So now we got the scale. What I'll do is click that on, put my mixing pot there, and tear it out. So that zeroes it out. And what I want to do is add 2 pounds of vegetables. So what I'm going to do is add, since I know I'm going to just do 2 batches, 4 pounds, I'm going to put half the onions in here, half the carrots. Okay, so I want to make sure I get that, and half the garlic. You know, roughly. You don't have to be super exact. So, if you're curious, that's 1 pound. That's a whole pound of other vegetables. So, what we want to do is top that off up until it's 2 pounds. super exact, but what the heck, I do. So, here we go. 2 pounds exactly. Now, here's where the stick comes in. Before we get there, 1 tablespoon of pink Himalayan salt. And here, just simply mix it up. The goal here is to get everything tossed, relatively throughout, as well as get that salt covering and dispersed evenly, through the batch. Okay. Now here's the important step. The goal here is to mash, or I call it bruising, the vegetables. You don't want to pulverize it, but we want to smash the cabbage enough that liquid, the natural juices, the natural water in there actually starts to seep out. And I'm not sure if we can see, but you can actually see glistening. You can see the wetness occurring here. Maybe want to get a zoom in on that. And this is important because those juices, when they are leached out and interact with the salt, that kicks off the fermentation process. And it's a lot easier to bruise it, pound it in here than it is in the mason jar. That's why I have a big pot. The other reason is I'm really messy, so with this stuff flying all over the place in the kitchen, then I don't have to worry about it flying around as well. Okay, so we're ready to start filling up the jar. So, I forgot to mention, good pair of tongs. And again, I'm holding it over the pot because this stuff tends to get messy. I know other people have funnels. What the heck? It's not, not that big of a deal. So you can see it's loose. If you want to use a spoon, go ahead. I don't know. But the first going in can be relatively plentiful. All right. Now look, you see all that? But watch what this mashes down to. So here's my famous high-tech stick and a pounder. And what we're doing is pushing this, all of the materials, cabbage and vegetables, down as firmly as we can. Now, it may look like I'm pushing hard. You don't have to. You don't have to be Hercules, but you do want to get it firmly packed in there. At some point, we want to push enough that the liquid will actually surface and actually cover the top of it, but that really won't happen until we get into the second batch. So we keep going. One tablespoon salt here. See, start with it. Now, by this time, we want to put enough pressure such that the liquid water, the juices, start surfacing at the top of the vegetables. Okay. I don't know if you can see that. See how it'll get better, but see how the juices are coming in there? Yeah, that's what we want to see. And this is where the stick, again, I'm not applying a lot of pressure, but getting those corners in really helps press it down. Now you can see the juices really surfacing. That's what you want. That indicates does two things. You want the liquid to cover the top of the kraut when you're done, because that actually helps seal in sort of as an airlock. And now you've pressed it enough that the juices have been extracted and fermentation can kick off to a roaring start, which is always good. So this process has worked well for me. I've seen other methods using a 1 quart jar. Waste of time, okay? Just like, 2 quart is just a good size minimum, even for one person or a couple or a small family or a large family, and you just multiply the batches. You'll have some floaties, but again, you want those juices up to the top. And if you take back and look at your masterpiece, you can see it's very, very well packed in. And that's what you're shooting for. Now, here's some tricks of the trade. Remember those leaves that we pulled off? I said we were going to put these to good use. Yeah, okay. Watch. So what I do here, using the bottom of the jar as the template, but this is going to be sort of another airlock. You catching all this? So 2 things. One, it's kraut, but it actually acts as a kind of a membrane or a barrier, and you can see it kind of keeps it and kind of just seals it in. So I'm just pushing it in around the corners, so kind of keeps that tightly packed. But the real purpose is that it then becomes a really, really nice base for this, and you've got things sealed in. That's what you want. Okay? Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. These are the glass weights that keep that lid down, keep the cabbage from rising up, so that the jar, the top of the jar, is covered with liquid. Again, that acts as an airlock and sealant to help the fermentation process. this guy. Figure out how to, and you know, have to put human tight. You know, it doesn't have to be the Hulk, but you want to get it, you know, finger tight. The purpose, again, this is an airlock. This will bubble over, and I'll show you how we do to accommodate that. Okay, here's the last piece of equipment. This is my high-tech fermentation chamber, as you can see. What is it? It's a cardboard box. Well, what are we doing with a cardboard box? Well, I'll show you. So I got an old piece of Tupperware, one that will fit the base, and one that will fit in my fermentation chamber. And I'm going to get you a shot of that. And as you can see, this one has room for two, so if we were doing another batch, that'll work out. And then here's the other part of my fermentation chamber is an old cheat. Okay, why is this happening? To ferment properly and efficiently, you want to find a place that's two criteria: room temperature and dark. Okay, so I've accomplished that. If you have a cabinet, or it doesn't even have to be in your kitchen, you know, it could be in a bedroom, it could be in a closet, but this way I have this in an adjoining room, and it's easy enough to check on each day. Fermentation, let's talk about duration. The first 3 days, in fact the first 24 hours, this thing will be bubbling over such that juice will run out and fall down. And I learned the hard way for the first couple times. That's why you need this little catch bin, because otherwise the juice will run down and your box will get wet, your paper, your desk, whatever. So you need some sort of waterproof container that this sits in. So the first day, in fact, we'll come back, but we'll need to burp it. The second day, third day, the first 3 days are really the most active fermentation, where you can see bubbles, and we'll show you pictures of that as we watch this progress. I like my kraut. I can start eating this as early as 7 days. And why? It's a little fresher, it's a little crisper. To me, it just tastes better. But you can, you know, other fermentation is, you know, 28 days. Literally, I start sampling it at 7 days, and to the point I try it every other day until it gets to the point where I like it. Then I'll take it and put it in the fridge. Once it's in the fridge, it actually will keep fermenting, but much, much slower because of the temperatures have dropped. It'll keep this way for 6 months in your refrigerator without any issues. So depending on your schedule, you know, if you want to make 2, keep 1, or, you know, only one, do it once every other week, doesn't matter. Whatever you need to accommodate that, but that's my fermentation. Okay, we'll check back. This is the following morning. We're going to see how the first overnight of the fermentation. Oh, we are in good shape. So if you're curious about how much spillover occurs, okay. take a little bit out just to kind of get it. So here, that's almost 4 ounces of juiced liquid. I don't know where it comes from, but that's what you have to accommodate. And then here, after I made that batch, I made a second batch with the other stuff, and a little bit shorter, not by much, but it's not going as much. So that's what you want. You want the liquid to escape out, but no contaminants to get in. So that's within, oh gosh, that's like 16 hours ago. So the first day will be the biggest. We'll check on it the next 2 days and see where we're at. Okay, this is day 2. And again, more liquid in the first batch. Not much, a little bit dripped over. But this one, see the bubbles? That is active fermentation. So that's a very good thing. So we're excellent shape. This is exactly what it's supposed to be doing. This is another example of active fermentation. Bubbles are good. This is a picture of the previous method I was using before I purchased the glass weights and the airlock plastic lids. This shows the standard ball mason jar lids and a jelly jar filled with water being used as the weight. The most obvious problem is that you can't fit as much kraut into these when you have such a big object being used as the weight. That's why I heavily recommend, if you're going to do this with any frequency, get the glass weights and the airlock lids. And this is where I used a mixture of purple or red cabbage along with white cabbage. This is right after packing, and it looks pretty colorful, but I will guarantee you by the end of 2 weeks, everything is a shade of purple. And here's what a jar of kraut looks like when you add a tablespoon of Thai red curry paste to each 2 pounds of vegetables.